It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. If you are just tuning in, we're continuing on with this series on women leaders in the private equity and mergers and acquisition space, very often called PE and M&A. So today I have the honor and pleasure of speaking with Ellen Long. I was introduced to Ellen through other members of women in private equity and people in the know. And it's been a joy getting to know her. And I think you're going to love her stories and exactly what she has to say. Ellen helps entrepreneurs build and sell profitable, fun, and family-oriented companies. She is a TEDx speaker, a Woman to Watch award winner, a graduate of the Leadership Wilmington, and most importantly, she's a course creator for Wealth Fit. Ellen is also part of STS Capital. More than anything, Ellen, I have to tell you, has impressed me so with everything she's doing in the women leadership space, her passion about women leaders, taking on and accomplishing anything they want, as well as selling their companies and building what's important to them. So Ellen, thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
So let's start with the backstory. How'd you get into all of this?
Sure.
I'm always curious. I know our listeners are curious. Like, how do you start in this space? How did this happen for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to go way back because I think it's kind of fun, but I was that weird little kid who grew up around tons of entrepreneurs. And when I was in middle school, I decided I wanted to be a business consultant. And there's not a lot of little girls who have that dream. And I really kept that the whole way through. So even going through college, getting my business administration, and then getting my MBA, it was always something I wanted to do because I just grew up around entrepreneurship. My dad is an entrepreneur. He has 3 companies. My uncles are all entrepreneurs. So, and even all his friends were too, because as you know, entrepreneurs, we like to flock together. So that's really how I got started. I think just being around it and growing up in it and wanting to help other entrepreneurs along their journey.
I actually get that very well. I mean, my dad started a business. My mom started a business. And I remember in my mid-20s, I was a little later than you, but in my mid-20s, it's like, I just had this thing that I wanted to be the master of my own destiny. I wanted to start a company, and people are like, well, don't you want to do this and that? I was like, no, I want to work for myself. I want to build something. So exactly. I am so aligned with you.
Yeah. And I think too, I thought about consulting through McKinsey. I got a job offer too from one of those big consulting firms. And I thought, you know what? I want to see the whole picture. A lot of times in those consulting firms, you get like a little slice, you become an expert in this little slice. And I wanted to meet with clients and see them and see the whole picture and really help them along that whole journey. So yeah, I think starting the company with my dad, starting in sort of a wealth management insurance side, and then adding the MBA and all the business side and really joining it all together to help entrepreneurs on their personal and their business side has been really an exciting journey.
So I love, you got started with your dad, and that's probably a discussion in and of itself of working with family business.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things you now hunker down on is family business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think being a part of a family business, it's easier people understand that, right? So entrepreneurs that are in family businesses, and I would argue that every entrepreneur's business is a family business, because the way that we live, with our vacations being work and our work being vacations, and how we all, it's all one whole process. And so I think working with family business has been really fun, but I consider all entrepreneurs who have families to own a family business.
I have never heard anybody speak about it that way, and you are 1,000% spot on. Because I've owned a business for 30 years. Slater Success is my second business. My husband's owned businesses over our 30 plus years. He's on his, second business or something. Yeah. It's part of the core value of the family.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing we always say too is the family should benefit the business and the business should benefit the family. So it should
Tell
be
me more about that, because that's a great saying.
Yeah. I think it needs to be where they help each other out, where there's a benefit. So a lot of times, entrepreneurs they'll sacrifice their family for their business. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, what did I do? And then they sacrifice their business for their family. But we like to integrate the two. So how can the business benefit the family? How can the family benefit the business? So we like to even ask, what are some skills or talents that your family has that can be a part of this business that you haven't tapped into? Because that's labor, that's creativity, that's ideas sitting around us all the time. So how can we pull the family into it? And how can we make the business benefit the family? So we're always looking for that business and that personal side to have a symbiotic relationship between the two. And it's way more fun that way. And everyone gets way more into it. And the family also sees how the business can be fun and interesting and helpful for them too, instead of just this business taking the life out of the entrepreneur that they're around.
So it's interesting. And I want to ask you this. In looking at family businesses, right? It's a beautiful niche market. There's so many of them out there. And then I could see so many listeners saying, how do you find them? Like, where do you network? Are they, is there a networking group for family businesses? Does B&I have that subset? Like, where does it, right? If you look at it, and if you look at women, women's networking and it's tougher to find.
Yeah.
So how have you built this for yourself? And I'm asking this for a reason, and listeners, I'm going to give you my back thinking on this. It's so easy. Sometimes we come up with this great idea and it's like, oh, but I could never develop it, or I don't know how, right? And yet Ellen has. So I'm curious, and I want you to raise your ideas about curiosity, or raise your consciousness around curiosity to see, gee, when you have something this niche, how do we market this? How do we network within here?
Yeah. I think the two major things in all of our business that really has helped us the most is mentoring and networking. So I separate those two because I think they're very different, obviously, but so much of my life has been because of mentoring. So having those mentors to step into your life and say, this is something you should go after. This is something that's unique to you. Here's your strengths. Here's your weaknesses. And also here is my network. So one thing that really helped on the whole marketing and that journey that I've been on has been mentors coming into my life and saying, yes, you should work with your father instead of working for McKinsey. And I even had a woman mentor who, she was everywhere in town. Like, everyone knew her name. She was getting awards. She was giving awards. And one day I just asked her, I said, how is this happening? How are you everywhere? And she said, oh, well, my mentor set me up on a 3-year plan so that everyone in this town, in this city, would know my name. And she said, wow, do you want to do it? And I was like, oh, absolutely. So we went down this 3-year journey. And by the end of 3 years, everyone in the city knew my name. And I was winning awards and I was giving TED Talks. And it was just this whole wild journey just because I sat down and said, how does everyone know you? And she said, mentoring. And so that was one thing that I really took. So one is having mentors that are in those spaces, I think, is huge. So if you can find the people who are already established, instead of, a lot of times I think we come as a new person, we think like, oh, I have to network from the bottom up. I have to get in there. I have to, pay my dues and all this stuff. No, if you have something worth, something of value that you can offer this audience, if you can find the people who are running those and get to know them, ask them to be your mentors, and really infiltrate, not from the bottom, but from the top, it's so much easier. So I've been doing this recently with women networks of saying to the leaders of these masterminds, hi, this is what I can do. This is what I offer. I would love to help women entrepreneurs build and sell their companies. Is that something you're interested in? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes. So bringing me into those, I think, is huge. And then the networking that comes from that is incredible, right? Because then you're brought in as this expert because you have a competence, because you have value that you're bringing to them. And I just offer for free, like, hey, I'm happy to do a talk. I'm happy to come and engage. I'm happy to do whatever would help your mastermind, your network. If you come in with that attitude of, I want to help, it's amazing what doors can open for you.
So as the doors opened, how have you taken this and run with it? You have some massive accomplishments under your belt. You're beautiful. You're in the scheme of things, at least compared to me, you're young. what are some of the things that you have done in the specifics as far as building the connections? Sometimes I wonder if people question, what is it really like to build the connections and then keep those relationships going? Because that's where the golden ticket is.
Yeah, I think, and this is going to sound, I don't know, it's going to sound a little different than what a lot of people talk about, but I approach it as friendship. I've always loved friendship. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I think if you can approach a networking event like a person looking for new friends, looking for people who have the same passions and interests, and like I spent one networking call that we were supposed to be talking about business, and we talked about beach volleyball for like 30 minutes. Well, and people think, oh my gosh, what a waste of time. You didn't do any business. You didn't talk about anything, right? No, because now we have this awesome connection. We had a great time together, and he's happy. At the end of it, he goes, oh my gosh, wait, we didn't even talk about our business. What do you do? But because of that, we've had continuous conversations. We've talked about playing volleyball together, all these things. So I think when you approach it as a person who is just looking to bring value, to be a friend, to, talk about life with, I think if it can go deeper than just business, people really, especially nowadays with all our artificial intelligence and, our computers that separate us, when you bring a human element to networking and mentorship and understanding, and hey, I want to learn from you, here's some things I can help you with, it completely changes the game.
I have, for the longest time, people have said, ask me about networking, or I teach on networking, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I said, my number one rule of thumb is, they're like, well, how do you choose your networking groups, Ivy? And I said, based on people I like.
Yeah.
It's 100%. I build, and Ellen and I came on today to record, and we immediately deviated into a conversation about pickleball.
Exactly.
Truth be told, listeners, this isn't just, like a canned presentation. We truly, if I actually showed a video of myself today, I would be sweaty and disgusting, because I just played pickleball with some girlfriends who we were then talking business with, but they're just friends. Yeah. And I think what you're saying is so often forgotten.
Right.
Is to create the connections with true people, to create the people connections.
Absolutely.
Talk to people you really like and you want to talk to again, and you look forward to. It's not about the business comes.
Yeah. I have a friend who, I love this analogy, but she would say, I said, how do you pick a gym? Right. So that's something we're all trying to do. How do we pick out the workout gym? Well, she said, well, I walk into a gym and I look at the people. And if I don't want to look like the people, I walk out. And I thought, oh my goodness, right? But I think so much of networking is like that. You walk into a room and you say, do I want to be more like these people in this room? Do I want to learn from them? Do I want to grow with them? And if the answer is no, then you should probably walk out, because they're not your people. And I think we've been amazingly blessed and lucky to be a part of Genius Network, which is a group of fun entrepreneurs who are growing, who care about their health. Like, I walk into that room and I think, I want to be more like these people. And so being able to interact with them and network, we have the same passions, we're curious about the same things. And so being able to wrap business into all of that together is incredible. So I've been able to be in a lot of rooms I shouldn't have been in. Right. So I love that. I've been in so many rooms where people are like, how did you get here? I remember this one time, I was in my early 20s. I had basically no money. Right. I just paid for my MBA, was completely broke. And somehow I end up at this venture capital luncheon, and the minimum investment was $250,000 per deal. And I remember this one guy looked at me and he said, this is a VC like lunch. How did you get here? Well, I had gotten there because I gave a TED talk with one of the VCs, and we had become friends, and we had helped each other with our speeches. So I had found us a church that let us use their stage. So we practice on stage together, and we developed this whole friendship. And he said, hey, I have this VC lunch. Would you be interested in it? You're kind of in that field. Why don't you come? So I end up at this VC luncheon. I meet all these people and make some really cool connections. And I never should have been there. So I think when you treat people like people, you end up in places you probably shouldn't be, just because you're being a person that is friendly and kind and interesting and adds value. at any of these places, right? So I think that's important for people to remember that it's so much more than just business.
And I, what you're saying is so true and spot on and brilliant in and of itself. And I just have said to so many peers and colleagues and clients over the years, people do business with people.
Absolutely.
Lean into the people and have fun with it. Enjoy it. And I was like, if you're not having fun, they're not your people.
Exactly. Yeah. And you mentioned SDS. So they're a really awesome partner-ish for us. We have our own business and then they do M&A, and we work really well together because we build the businesses so they can sell. And then they're a great partner to come and say, we'll help you sell it. We'll help you find strategics to do that. But even that relationship, we've become friends with Rob Follows and Brenda and all those people. And it's so fun to see them on these calls and, do deals with them. But I love the dinners where Rob talks about all his ridiculous stories and all the crazy places he's been. And so at the end of the day, while I love the business side, I love the human side more. And I think, the combination of being able to bring those two things that you love and the passion you have for both, bringing them together, that's what's fun for me about work, is helping people on this journey, seeing them succeed, going from $5 million company to a $50 million company, or a $20 million company to a $150 million company, and all that comes along the way that we get to help with, and then seeing them be able to sell their company and being a part of that is just, it's been a wild but fun journey. And I'm glad I stuck it out in the beginning when it wasn't so good.
So let me ask you this. What has surprised you along the way?
I think what surprised me is, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but how much easier it's been than even I thought, in the sense that it's really hard at the beginning, I feel like, in entrepreneurship. So the first 5 years, I feel like we made no money. We had just few clients. It was really hard. It was this whole slog. And then it's like you break this water tension almost. And it's like you kind of start shooting out. And I think the last couple of years especially has just been really fun to see how all the work that you put, that you think, I'm never going to get anywhere. I'm just slogging through. I'm barely making money. I'm watching my peers, rise and get promotions. And I'm still doing this entrepreneur thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, everything starts changing. And the connections that you built for 5, 6, 10 years start really becoming these amazing business networks. And all of a sudden it's like all the pieces start falling into place, and you see the puzzle and you didn't realize that every piece was going to fit into this puzzle. It looked like there was no connection. And then all of a sudden they all start coming together. And I think that has been such a cool and fun part of this.
It's funny you say that. I have to say, I was just talking to somebody about something similar this morning. You feel, there is an expression, I believe, in: energy out, energy back.
Yeah.
Okay. And yet the energy out doesn't always coincide in the timeline of the energy back. And literally I was talking, it's 8 a.m. this morning, I was having this conversation. And then all of a sudden, I'll say sometimes I use this example of the turtle versus the hare. Who actually wins the race? The turtle. And so it's the consistency. That's those consistencies of that little, one connection to the next and the next. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness. And here's opportunity showing up like your garden in full bloom.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think of it like riding a bike. In order to go somewhere, you have to pedal, right? And at first, starting off is the hardest part of biking, right? Starting off and pedaling. But once you start going and you just keep going, I guess if I had to think about it, the thing that surprised me the most is you go to this thing that you think, oh, this is a waste of my time. It's another networking group. It's another, whatever. I'm never going to make a connection that matters. And then you meet that one person who introduces you to that other person, who introduces you to another person. And all of a sudden, that one thing, right? It was like a spark that lit the fire. And then all of a sudden, the forest is ablaze, and you can trace it back to that moment when you thought, this is a waste of my time. And I just love that about entrepreneurship, that can happen. I think that's what's unique about entrepreneurship, is there can be these small moments that end up being these massive opportunities. And I I haven't been in the corporate world very long, couple of years, but it doesn't seem to quite happen like that. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship. Small things can have huge impacts.
So what would be one tip you would leave for our listeners?
I think finding, and I've said this, but finding mentors in your space and having multiple, I think of it as a board. I think everyone should have a board, a personal board where they have certain people that they go to for certain things, because that is where they shine. That is their expertise. That's their competence. And being able to have those people in your life at key moments when you need someone else to speak into what your next step is going to be, and having more than one. I think a lot of times people get stuck on one mentor. And while a mentor is great, they're only one person, and they can only have so many areas and so many networks and so many opportunities to help you. And so thinking about how can I create this personal board, I like to call it, of people in my life that I can go to for a lot of different areas so that I can have a different perspective when I need to make big decisions in my life.
I agree with you. Having that personal board, having the resources, the connections, the relationships at your fingertips is one of the things is so smart and so important as a leader, and a leader who has a vision of where you want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll just share one last story because I think it really shows this. Is when I was trying to decide whether to go into entrepreneurship, work with my father, start this company, or go into a big consulting firm, I had these two gentlemen in Wilmington, and they were VC guys. One of the guys had sold his company to Apple for tons of money, right? And so they used to have these Friday nights where we'd sit on the water and we'd hang out, and we'd have a glass of wine or something. And so we're sitting there, and I came to them and I said, "Hey, I'm about to make a really big decision. Can I ask your opinion?" And they had all these people around them. They're like, "Ellen needs to talk to us. So you guys go over there." And we sat on this porch swing overlooking the inland waterway in Wilmington. And we talked about this decision that I was going to make. And they both said, "This is the path you should take. Do it." And I think I credit a lot of that journey to them, of just being able to sit down with them and ask their opinion. And that was because I had built a relationship with them prior. So I think, again, finding those mentors and being able to ask them those questions is life-changing.
And I'm going to add one thing to that, because I agree with you, finding the mentors. And very often we think about mentorship of when we're young. We need mentors when we're young. And I want to kind of like put a hole in that belief or that thought process. We need mentors at all ages.
Absolutely.
At all parts of our lives, in all parts of our career and our business journey. We're making various different decisions. And that's what, Ellen is referring to about building that board. Yeah. And those are your mentors. Those are people to talk things through with, see the other side, different points of view, and also see people of how they see you that you might not be seeing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And be a personal board member for other people. I think, as I've gotten that, being able to give it back to the people that are coming up underneath me, being able to be a personal board for them, to be a sounding board. So not only looking for your own, but also looking to give back and help other people on theirs.
Love it.
Yeah.
Ellen, how can our listeners connect with you and follow you? And
you can find me on LinkedIn. I think we have a link below. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to talk with people, chat. That's probably the best way. We'll put my email in there if you want to email me, say, "Hey, I heard you on the Success Podcast and I'd love to chat." So I'm always open to meeting new people, making new connections, and hopefully some new friends.
I love it. And listeners, this is the part of the show that I repeat myself over and over again. Take a moment. If you gave her success story the time and energy to listen to Ellen and I's conversation today, take a moment, write it down, put it in your phone, your notes, whatever it is, a sticky Post-it note, whatever is your thing. What is your one takeaway or aha from this conversation? And then make that decision. What action are you going to take from it? Because that's where the follow-up, follow-through, and success is. Thank you for joining us today on Her Success Story. And if you're enjoying this series, please share this forward with your friends, peers, and colleagues. See you next time.